This is Walt Disney World Today. Give us 5 minutes and we'll give you the world.
It's Monday, January 9th, 2006, and this is episode number 47 of Walt Disney World Today. I'm Matt Hochberg from MGMstudios.org. We have Disney Half Marathon champion Len Testa, who's also the co-author of The Unofficial Guide to Walt Disney World, on the show today. Welcome, Len.
Hey, how's it going, Matt?
Outstanding. And we also have Mike Newell of Mouse World Radio. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, Matt, how you doing? And congratulations, Len, by the way. Hello?
Congratulations?
Yeah.
On becoming the Half Marathon champion.
Half Marathon champion?
Oh!
I thought my connection was bad for a minute there. It's like dead silence.
I'm the Half Marathon champion of this podcast, which means I beat the controlled stagger of Mike Scopa across the finish line.
Yeah, Len thought for a second, congratulations. Where's the wife?
Were the Kenyans disqualified? What happened?
I thought I bombed really bad there.
Oh, sorry. No, sorry.
On today's show, we're giving out our touring strategies for a day and a half at the Magic Kingdom. And if you're asking yourself, why a day and a half? Well, often guests arrive in Orlando in the afternoon and have half day the half day to start off their trip. So they often choose the Magic Kingdom, and then, of course, they can't do everything in just that half day, so they end up going back for another day. So we're going to give you a day and a half touring guide. And Len, where do we start? What are some things to really keep in mind before you start?
Well, a couple of things to keep in mind are what your touring or what attractions you want to see when you're in the park, and that's really going to govern where you're going to start the tour. Also, whether your party includes small children who can't ride attractions with height requirements, things like Space Mountain or Splash Mountain or Big Thunder Mountain. So it'll definitely change your touring pattern as well.
Now, this we're going to be talking about the half day, Len. We're talking about someone who's going to be landing in Orlando. What, about 11 or 12?
Yeah, like around 11 or 12 o'clock. You're in the parks around 1 or 2 p.m. and hopefully the park is open till at least 7 o'clock, 7 p.m. and possibly a little bit later. But the idea for this first half a day is to get out of the way some of the more lengthy attractions in the park, things like live performances, shows like Hall of Presidents, and things that sort of take up the middle part of a day. Things that you could use time for the next day to like take a nap, for example, back at the hotel.
And before we get into this, Len, I just wanted to jump off on a quick tangent here. When we say that people, of course, land at 11 or 12, I mean, how much time should people consider that it'll take them to get from the airport, meaning when they land, to the gates of the Magic Kingdom, or really any theme park?
You know, if you're driving, allow an hour to pick up your car and get to Walt Disney World from the airport. I think it's like a 15-mile drive. But, allow some time to actually pick up the car. Oh, one quick tip, since we're talking about car rentals. If you're renting from, like, Dollar or from Budget, be sure and join their frequent renter program. It's free, and one big advantage is you get to you get front-of-the-line access when renting cars from them, so you don't have to wait in the long regular lines. And sometimes for these programs, they'll save you half an hour to an hour waiting in line right there at the airport.
Sounds like FastPass.
Yeah, really, it's like right. That's a great analogy, Mike. It's like the auto rental equivalent of FastPass.
And how much time should guests allocate if they're planning on taking Disney's Magical Express?
I've heard people making the trip in 45 minutes, which I think is probably the least amount of time to allocate. And I've heard it taking as much as 3 hours, so probably something in the middle there. Say like an hour and 20 minutes to an hour and 40 minutes.
Sure.
Something like that. Don't forget that with Magical Express, if there are other people on your bus, and there's almost certainly going to be, that you might make stops at other resorts prior to getting to your resort. So it's going to take a little bit longer than you driving directly with your car to get to your resort.
So we're at Magic Kingdom. It's 1-ish. Where are we going?
Well, here's the basic strategy that you want to do. Between 1 and 3 o'clock is the peak time for attendance in the Magic Kingdom. People have shown up there usually no later than 11 or 12 o'clock. Everyone's there right now. It's the hot part of the day. If you're there during the summer or even during the spring or early fall. It's hot. It's crowded. You definitely don't want to go get in line for Splash Mountain or Big Thunder Mountain, or stand in the heat outside of Space Mountain. What you're looking for here right now is to wait out the crowds. That's your strategy. To wait it out until just after the parade, when parents with small children start to leave the park to go back to the hotel. So because of that, you want to stay indoors, in air conditioning as much as you can. I like the strategy of heading for Frontierland and Liberty Square and catching things like Tiki Birds, Country Bear Jamboree, which are next door to each other, maybe Pirates of the Caribbean, which was Matt's suggestion, Liberty Bell Riverboat, and Hall of Presidents.
Would Haunted Mansions fit into that?
Haunted Mansion, maybe. You want to check the queue times for that. Haunted Mansion sort of depends. It doesn't really get going till late morning, but I think a lot of people spill over from Fantasyland doing a counterclockwise tour of the Magic Kingdom and sort of catch Haunted Mansion.
So it's all those unofficial guide listeners that
right on the way to Frontier.
You just hit it, you run into them.
Yeah, exactly. See a bunch of people carrying their red and white books. It's the guide. Yeah, but that'll essentially, if you see these attractions, there's rarely a wait for any of them. They're all, except for the Liberty Bell Riverboat, they're all indoors, in air conditioning. You're getting out of the sun. You're seated. And you're not going to be fighting crowds to see these things. So, first thing you do in the parks, actually, I forgot this. First thing you do in the park is you go get a fast pass for whatever big ticket attraction you want to see. So if that's Splash or Big Thunder or Space Mountain, go get fast passes for that, and then concentrate on these stage shows and really just wait the people out of the park until they leave after the parade.
Well, it sounds like then if you really want to be commando style, step one, get into the park and pick a headliner attraction to get a fast pass for, and then go from there to say Country Bears is probably the closest, or Pirates, depending on what your preference may be, and work your way around there.
That's right. And speaking of Pirates, we tested out this left line versus right line theory over the weekend at Pirates because they were operating both the left and the right queues, and we didn't find any noticeable difference in the left line versus the right line. Half the time that we went, the left line was shorter. Half the time we went, the right line was shorter. But literally, the difference in left line versus right line every time was literally one boat. And I think it came down to really, however, the number of people in the parties immediately ahead of us broke down to where if there was just a little bit of extra room, somebody got on, and if there wasn't, they didn't. So I don't think that there's any advantage to left line versus the right line, and I don't think it's true at any of the attractions. In particular, I don't think it's true on Pirates Falls. I've certainly seen no data to support it, and our own empirical testing doesn't seem to support the idea. So,
sure. And for people who have no idea what we're talking about, there's a theory out there that the left side of Pirates is always a shorter wait than the right side.
Yeah. Well, what I've heard is that people claim is that the left line is often shorter, but no one ever says what often means. and of course, no one ever thinks of the corollary that, if it was most, right, if the left line was mostly shorter,
yep,
then they would say mostly shorter. But to say often means that the right line is mostly shorter. No one ever thinks of the opposite of that.
Right.
In any event, it's all crap. So there's no point. No matter how you slice it, it's still crap, right? So there's no difference left line versus right line. For me, it comes down to which line is more enjoyable. The queue is more enjoyable. I prefer the left. Whatever.
So getting back to the touring strategy, Len.
Yeah. So again, the idea is to pick up a fast pass first thing when you get in the park for whatever you want to see, for whatever headliner attraction you want to see, and then really wait the crowds out for a couple hours, staying indoors and seated during the hot part of the day, and then around like 3 or 3:30, either right before parade time or shortly thereafter, you want to start picking off some of the attractions that will have slowed down during the parade time. Now, it might be a good time to see Haunted Mansion if you're doing a clockwise tour of the park, or in Fantasyland PhilharMagic. is a little bit slower during the parade, as is It's a Small World and the Carousel. In Tomorrowland, the Tomorrowland Speedway slows down a little bit, and so does...
Slows down Tomorrowland Speedway, you mean it has a 3-hour wait instead of a 4-hour wait?
Yeah. No, actually, it'll dip down to a relatively sane wait of, like, let's say 20, 25 minutes. If the wait throughout most of the day is 60 minutes, it'll dip down considerably. Because remember, don't forget, the people that are going on the Tomorrowland Speedway are generally small children, and their parents are pulling them off these rides to go to the parade.
That's true.
So then it's really only the drunk teenagers that are driving around left, and there's only about 25 minutes worth of them in the queue.
Right.
So Tomorrowland Speedway Buzz has a little bit of a dip right around the parade. The one thing though is if you're going to be watching the parade, you definitely want to be in either Liberty Bell Riverboat or Hall of Presidents when the parade starts, because if you're on the Adventureland side of the parade route, you're going to get cut off from the rest of the park by the parade route. You want to be sort of on the right-hand side of the parade, if you will, the parade route when the parade starts. So that means Liberty Bell Riverboat or Hall of Presidents or something in Fantasyland.
Great. And so you get to, now we're past the parade time, and like you said, Len, families with smaller children tend to be leaving at this time?
Yeah, typically right after the parade, families with small children tend to leave the parks. So, incidentally, this is why Disney schedules the parade times when they do. So you'll notice, for example, at the more popular parks, the Magic Kingdom, the parade is relatively early, whereas at the less popular parks, which are the Animal Kingdom and the Studios, the parades are later in the day. That's to get families with small children to stay longer. People will say, well, we'll leave after the parade. Yeah. And if the parade's at 4 o'clock or 5:30, it means they implicitly that they stay longer.
And so after the parade, would you?
Well, there's a couple things you could do. I mean, if you're just completely exhausted after the parade, you can just go back to the hotel and call it a day. Or you can stay in the park and pick up a few other attractions. Instead of bouncing around the park on your first day, I would just say do a clockwise tour, and as you walk past an attraction, check the wait time. If it's something like It's a Small World and you want to see it and the wait time is only 10 minutes, go ahead and get in line, because it's less things you have to do then on your full day.
Right.
In the park. I think there are some attractions like the TTA, the Tomorrowland Transit Authority, and possibly other things like Buzz or whatnot that you can fit in that first partial day, that makes your second day of touring so much easier.
Sure.
You might even be able to include a nap during your full day because of all the attractions you get out of the way on your first day.
And so then on the second day, you're just really covering the headliner attractions that you skipped the first day.
Right. So if you have a standard touring plan like one from the guide or from any other site, you'll just cross off the attractions that you have already seen and proceed with the rest of the attractions in that touring plan.
Great. Would there be any tips to consider while touring on either day in terms of? I mean, I know you mentioned pretty much, with the exception of using FastPass on your half day, you're skipping most of the headliner attractions, and the closest you're getting to a headliner may be Pirates of the Caribbean or Haunted Mansion. Are there any other worthwhile things to note on either day?
Dinner's going to be kind of tricky on your first day, because if you're doing a clockwise tour of the Magic Kingdom, you're going to be somewhere between Fantasyland and Tomorrowland, roughly around dinner time. And I don't know that there's anything there that I love in terms of restaurants. I mean, you've got a choice of Cinderella's Royal Table, Pinocchio Village House, and Cosmic Ray Starlight Cafe, neither of which I love.
Don't forget to bring your mortgage with you to go to Cinderella's Royal Table.
Yeah, really. Now you know why the French Revolution happened, right? If Liberty Square had a guillotine along with those stockades, it'd be a completely different ending to Cinderellabration. But anyway, that's kind of tricky. So maybe it really depends on how your kids are feeling.
Would you say that you would fit Fantasyland in on your second day?
Yeah, I mean, the things in Fantasyland that are good to do anytime are things like PhilharMagic. I was there this past weekend, and the wait was never more than 10 minutes in the afternoon. Small World, the wait was 10 minutes, and even then it was it was posted at 10. It was more like 5. Cinderella's Golden Carousel was next available ride. Snow White was a 5-minute wait. Those are the types of things that you can pretty much pick off in your hopefully on your first afternoon. The things that are going to always be busy in Fantasyland are Pooh and Pan and Dumbo, and those you'll have to save for a morning.
Great. Well, that's it for us today. This has been episode number 47 of Walt Disney World Today. If you want to find older episodes, read our show notes, or perhaps send us some comments, visit the Walt Disney World Today website at www.wdwtoday.com. You can also email us at questions@wdwtoday.com. For Line Testa, Mike Scopa, and Mike Newell, I'm Matt Hochberg. We'll see you on the next show.